West Coast. I don't suspect West Coast are going to be on the radar very often this year because of the manner in which they're playing. So they're a bunch of mopers at the moment. They mope on the field, they mope off the field. It is, for the club that they are supposed to be and the club that they have been, it's an indictment.
It is. And they're not Melbourne. Melbourne have got much more talent, so they deserve to get all this. And this club deserves to get criticism for how they found themselves in this situation, which is a bigger deep dive. So what do? This one bit of vision, for me, summed up where they're at as a footy club. Look at Liam Ryan here. So there's Liam Ryan. This is early in the first quarter, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, geez, that's a good effort. That's a great run. That's a bounce. There's the kick for Waterman. Not great. What does he do, Liam Ryan? He pushes on, right? Waterman gets there, doesn't quite take it cleanly. Liam Ryan, look at this. That's a great attack on the foot. He gets back and lays the tackle and gets the ball up. What's Jake Waterman do? He gets angry at himself, turns his back on Liam Ryan and starts walking away saying, oh, I missed up an opportunity. Now, that's not just, I love Jake Waterman, but this is what happens. You go inside yourself when your team is as bad as that. So the simple message I would think for them, invest in your teammates. Don't abandon them, because you're going to struggle anyway. You might as well do it together. And so Jake Waterman, turn your back on Liam Ryan is symbolic of the footy club. Don't turn your back on him. Get over. Knock two Carlton blokes out of the road and pick your man up and tell him how great an effort it was. But Jake doing that is symbolic of where they're all at. I didn't get the footy. I mucked up. I'm hard on myself, and walk away. No. Invest in your mate. Forget about you. Go and get him, and then maybe one play at a time, and the next play, because they're going to. We know this, Jared. Everyone knows these. And you can trot out all the numbers about the worst contested footy possession game ever since 1999. 5,100 games have been logged by Champion Data. That game was the lowest contested possession count in history. So that's where they're at as a footy club. So don't abandon each other. Go back and invest in each other and see. And it mightn't come in wins. Your wins mightn't be in the W and L column. Your wins are Liam Ryan in the first quarter.
April's too big to have a woe be me complex. Is get to it.
I want to go to West Coast now, boys. Probably the most disappointing result from the weekend. Brownie, the early game on Saturday. What did you make of the Eagles?
Yeah, it was terrible. It's probably an indictment of sales VFL or SANFL standards. So it was worse than that. And, Carlton weren't that much better either. But you actually look at West Coast and the ball just flicked from one end of the ground to the other. Both ways, Bucks, you were calling the game. Look at West Coast, so since 2021, midway point of the year, 7 losses from their last 9 games and 2 wins, 3 wins, 5 wins and 0 wins so far this year. What's happened to this once mighty footy club?
That's a damning stat there. 77 contested possessions. That is the worst on record ever.
This is the tough job that Andrew McQualter, who both we know really well, has at his disposal. I mean, just purely from watching the game on the weekend, they just can't run. They can't run, and I think that's maybe a part of the reason why Harley Reid's gone to half-back. They just cannot run out of the game. The 2 players that caught my eye were Graham and Baker, clearly coming from premiership pedigree and elite performing environments. They were the only 2 players that stood out in terms of their work rate. Tim Kelly got dropped. Senior leader of this football club got dropped because he didn't have the work ethic or the desire to buy in.
Look at that horror run there. 73 games and they've won 10 of them. How much is this on their leaders, Bucks?
When I was watching them on the weekend, I thought, where's the on-field leadership? Where are the standards? And the 2 that you mentioned, Baker and Graham, are the ones that stood out to me. They've come in, from nowhere. But Liam Duggan, he hasn't been a last-line player, and we saw vision from a couple of weeks back where this was early in the game. And Darcy Jones is a speedster, and he covers the ground, unlike, a couple of % of AFL footballers only. But that's similar to the Viney vision we showed. And when a side's not playing well, we can find these. Even sometimes when the side's going well, you can see when players don't quite see out their task, but they're generally covered by other teammates. But in the end, the buck stops with the leaders. And at the moment, Oscar Allen is, take the off-field stuff aside, on-field he is not performing. He's not getting to as many contests. He's not putting his body on the line. He's not doing his job to the best of his capacity. Liam Duggan is another guy. Like, he's nowhere. He's a shadow of himself, but it just needs to start with contests and expectations on the ground. Baker and Graham must be coming in thinking, what's going on here?
You talk about
that's got to be
on
concerning as captains, though, when your captains are setting some of the poorer standards.
Yeah,
like, how do you address that as a coach?
Well,
you're going really hard
on Brownie.
Yeah, but are you going really hard in front of the group? Or are you going hard behind closed doors? Like, the captains of your club.
Well, the challenge is for the coach. Like, the coach needs to know that he's got players that are wedded to him and that see it eye to eye in regards to what the standards need to look like in the locker room. Now, contrary to what people believe externally, the senior coach isn't walking in the locker room all the time making sure that it's clean or making sure that the standards are right. That's on the leaders. And the locker room environment breeds a lot of poor habits or good habits, depending what standards you walk past or what standards you expect. And at the moment, I can imagine that your boys would have walked in from Richmond and gone, wow, is this the way it is? And maybe that embarrasses the guys that have been leading for the 3 or 4 years leading in. Maybe they're a little bit embarrassed about the whole thing. Well, man up. You've got to get it done. You've got to lift your standards. If someone comes in and says, nah, the bar's here, rather than thinking, oh, no, we haven't done it that way, go for it.
You talk about standards, and the standards off-field are on-field. Leaders lead. So we've just seen the two captains there, but this footage from the weekend, for mine, is the most simple thing to do in AFL. Now, yes, Patrick Cripps takes a young mark on Marich here. Now, Marich has played 34 games of footy. Ruben Ginby's played 45. Archie Reed's there as well. Stand the mark.
That's shocking.
That is embarrassing footage for the West Coast Eagles, that nobody wanted to take the responsibility to stand the mark after Patrick Cripps has taken a mark.
I was looking for the experienced player in that vision, and Duggan came in late then, but he came in late. Now, you sort of make excuses for young players, but they've played through their junior footy. They know what it is.
They know
it's just that they've switched off. They have switched off, but they should be held to account as well. Like, you shouldn't. You don't need a leader to tap you on the shoulder or yell out and say, stand on the mark. You've got to stay switched on. And at the moment, we're not seeing it from West Coast. We're not seeing it from Melbourne. And it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference in how you roll out in the team football that you play.
No doubt. The off-field, what we spoke about, the off-field stuff bleeds into the on-field.
You can nearly bet your bottom dollar that would be happening.
No question. Well, we all know, everyone in there, this is a very close industry, and we know players that have left that club and we know players that have gone into that club the last few years. The standards are not where other clubs are. Certainly not top 8 contending clubs.
North Melbourne out in the Barossa, comfortably beaten in the end by the Gold Coast Suns. Geordie, what's the North Melbourne supporter to expect at the moment?
Well, I think it's difficult because you had so much hope. I think the third season in, and you acquire players that you want to assist on field and perform as well. But unfortunately, at the moment, they're not as stable as what you would hope. Certainly, the defence is not as stable. They keep leaking 100 points. Probably the only game they haven't is the Melbourne game where they got over the top of Melbourne. So that was probably a bright light.
That was Melbourne. We've spoken about Melbourne can't score.
That was more Melbourne. So I think that is the concern. Clearly, they want to see the green shoots of stuff happening, but it's just not happening.
We speak about green shoots. Alastair Clarkson had to say this after the big loss against the Gold Coast Suns.
The very questions that you're asking of us right now, you've been asking of Gold Coast for the last 6 or 8 years. So we just know that it just takes time. Brisbane took 6 or 8 years and somewhere through that process they just developed the belief. They get their guys like McCluggage and Bailey and these types of guys in 60, 80 games, 100 games, and then they become really, really good players.
Alastair Clarkson, the senior coach of the North Melbourne Football Club there, mentions the Brisbane counterpart, and they were on AFL 360 prior to this, Clarkson and Fagan. And it's an interesting way to look at the North Melbourne rebuild compared to the Brisbane one.
Yeah, well, if you look at that, and you've got to take it at face value, he's trying to... the message goes back to his players that we're in a development phase and we need to build this. But you look at those numbers, and so that was... 2019 semi-final was at the end of the third year of Fagan. So it's actually 20 weeks advanced on where North Melbourne are under Clarkson at the moment. And the age and experience was relatively similar. Luke Hodge was in that side in 2019 semi-final, which bumps it up a little. But But the reality is that you're looking for these comparisons as a coach, you're looking at the premiership side, and you're speaking to your group saying, hey, they went through their bumps and bruises as well, but at the same time, they were top 4 side in his
fair different. Top 2 side.
Year.
They won 16 games that year. So yeah, the comparison that does make for great reading. The comparison, but no doubt it is from an age perspective. Defensively, that's a concern for me. And you're under Clarko, and obviously you guys were. High-powered offence, but you guys knew how to defend. Clarko's cluster, all that sort of stuff. But, geez, that doesn't make for great reading, does it? And I know Clarko came in and focused on that early days. Unfortunately, he was away from the club. He had a leave of absence for about 13, 14 weeks in his first year, which certainly doesn't help. But they've got to start to improve those numbers. Don't know what it is, because the defence is reasonably experienced. Midfield, there's some inexperienced guys there and some really talented guys. Now, whether they're just getting out of balance with how much they're running forward as to how much they're running defensively, we're not sure. But they've got to fix up that number, because they're conceding 100 pluses week in, week out, apart from against Melbourne.